Kia ora tātou, no mai haere mai. Wade Manson here from Sport Gisborne Tairāwhiti, and you're listening to our podcast, The Sideline Yak. Kia ora koutou, and welcome to a new segment of The Sideline Yak, Chronicles of a Coach. We wanted to test something a little bit different this time. We were curious to know what would happen if we got three coaches in a room and talked sport. Where would it take us and what would be discussed?
What's the great quote we learnt this year about the girls? That was a big one for me. Girls play well when they feel good. Boys play well to feel good.
Yep.
Is that right?
I think you've butchered that.
Thank you. Let's rephrase that.
I was fortunate enough to sit down with Keenan Ruru-Poharama, Adrian Sparks and Adam Tapsell, three seasoned coaches who volunteer across all areas of basketball in coaching, officiating, governance and playing. These three guys know their craft, from time with the Rising Suns, coaching age group levels, officiating and developing players right here in our own backyard. Our kōrero covers team culture, understanding your athlete, how we engage youth, and reflecting on lessons learned, all tied together with some great banter. I may be biased, but this was special. This was another honest and real discussion about what coaches are doing on the ground at a grassroots level right here in Tairāwhiti. My hope is that others get to listen to this. We share it and have these types of conversations to help build a community of best practice. It's a journey, whānau. We don't expect to get everything right, but if we are learning and adapting, then great things will happen. Whai a te mātauranga hei oranga mō koutou. Seek after learning for the sake of your well-being. Basically, if you follow the path of learning, the world will be your oyster. We will look to make Chronicles of a Coach a regular episode every 3 months. As always, please feel free to rate or review our show. Any feedback is greatly appreciated. In the meantime, please enjoy this episode with Keenan, Sparksy and Adam. Kia ora. No mai haere mai ki te Sideline Yak. Welcome boys to the show. First of all, I just want a big shout out to Rangai Studios for letting us record here today. We've got three of our coaches from basketball joining us. We're doing something a little bit different, but we've been lucky enough to be able to use this today, the podcast studio at Rangai. Massive shout out to Shannon and the team. Thank you very much for letting us test this out and see how we go. We are recording video as well, but we're not too sure what that's going to look like, so that may never see the light of day after today, but we'll see what happens. All right, boys, so thank you again for taking the time to come and have a chat with us. If I could just go around, starting off with you, Keen, just a little intro about yourself and who you are.
Tēnā koutou te iwi, ko Keenan Ruru-Poharama tōku ingoa, heuru iahau no te atanga mahaki. So yeah, I wear a couple hats in our basketball community. One, sitting on the GBA committee alongside Sparksy here. Also coaching in our GBA space with our rep teams. And then another one, helping out with Gizzy Boys. So coaching in that space too. Yeah.
Ka pai, thank you, Keenan. Sparksy, over to you.
Kia ora, ko Adrian Sparks, Taku Ingoa. Born and bred in Gizzy. Love the place, never really moved. Still in love with it. Here to stay, hopefully. GBA committee member. Coaching GBA basketball for a number of years now as the kids are growing up, helping Kings with Boys High, running leagues and stuff with GBA primary school, helping a few coaches out, so it's great.
Nice. Ka pai, thank you, Sparksy. Adam.
Yeah, thanks, Wade. Kia ora koutou, ko Adam Tapsell ahau, no ngā iwi katoa te Tairāwhiti, also he ori no te arawa, Ngāti Whakaue, Ngāti Kaungunu, me rongo mai wahine. Yeah, just in their basketball space, kind of come to it fairly late. I think I've been coaching for GBA probably about 7 years now, across a whole different broad spectrum of age groups. I think that's pretty much me.
Thank you, Adam. Right, I'm going to start us off. Origin story. I love an origin story. Can you guys share with us what sport looked like for you growing up? Who wants to kick it off? Sparksy, where you going, mate?
For me, not much. I was a bit of soccer at school and stuff. I remember working at Roydon's Veggie Market, where the coffee shop is now, on my Saturdays. So I probably missed out on a lot of Saturday sport, enjoyed the soccer. And it wasn't until I was a little bit older that a friend introduced me to basketball, and the loves never ended. I remember one time going down to the YMCA for club ball, and I'd actually missed the game. And I remember how devastated I felt that I missed out on a game of basketball. So it's pretty funny that I fell in love with a game that I'm not very good at. The loves never stopped.
What was the feeling? You felt like you missed out on something. Like why that feeling?
Well, it's just so much. It was such fun, the challenge, the skill level, the camaraderie, all those combinations, and the sense of belonging and all that sort of stuff was huge.
How old would you have been back then?
I'm going to say about 20.
Yep.
So I'd missed that high school era, and fell into it a bit later. But just the ability to, and it's 100%, like you're not there only giving 20% basketball, you're 100 miles an hour as fast as you can, as strong as you can, it's all on. And I enjoyed that heaps.
Cool. Adam, what's your origin story look like?
Yeah, great question, Wade. I don't know, thinking back, I always looked at sports as being something that was fun, My first, probably earliest memories, rugby. It was rugby as a kid growing up. There wasn't a whole lot of options, but I still loved it, Growing up was pretty challenging. Came from a single parent home, 4 kids, so trying to get mum to be there to get me to sports and stuff was a little bit challenging. So it was one of those things you had to kind of work through. Never kind of lost that love for sports though. And like I was saying, it was always rugby. I can remember Saturday mornings. You loved it. Right? You're out there in bare feet, just covered in mud. And ice creams afterwards. Sometimes it'd be a neighbour that would get me to the games. His mum was busy with kids and that, and she'd get there when she could, which was awesome. So yeah, those are probably my earliest memories. Right up through high school, it was rugby and cricket in summer. That's kind of the 2 sports that we played. Kind of going all over the place here, but I remember, after schools, weekends, you're just out in the backyard all day, all night. Just rugby, winter time. Cricket summertime, just playing with the neighbours. And it's a bit of a shame. It kind of seems like we've lost that a little bit these days. And you kind of think, how can we get that back? But, maybe that's just how it was back then because didn't have bugger all else to do. Similar to Sparksy, I was kind of late coming into the basketball space. I think 6th form is when I really kind of started to get interested in it. And 6th, 7th form at Boys High, I just fell in love with the game. For a number of reasons, kind of just had that affinity for the game, kind of came naturally. And I just loved that whole kind of team concept where you got to have that, express yourself individually, guys, but within a team dynamic, really kind of just appealed to me. So those kind of like I was saying, that's when I think about, that's where my origins of sports are. You grow that love as a kid, still love it. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, mate. Cheers for that. Keenan.
Earliest memories of me playing sports, just like Adam, rugby, family influence in that. My father was a big rugby player, so naturally played that. My parents also squash players growing up, so I was able to tag along with that and try that out. When around intermediate age, I was lucky enough to have a flurry of sports introduced to me, so I got to try a lot of things and I kind of figured out what I like to play. That's when basketball got introduced into my life. Wasn't really good at it at the time, didn't get much time on the court, but I loved it, so I stuck at it. Volleyball, started playing that around that time. Table tennis was huge then, but I remember when I was around that age, the Suns were big around then, the Rising Suns, and my nan was a huge part of attending all those games. She worked at Turanga Health for the time, so I remember going to all those Rising Suns games, it being packed out YMCA and just enjoying that atmosphere. And that's really where I think the love for basketball started for me. Moving into high school, I think I nailed down on the sports I liked. I was fortunate enough to have some key influences in that space, and I've nailed down on the basketball and the volleyball. Yeah, carried it on till today.
when we look at the influences, because it's something that sort of all three of you guys have said around, like, so Sparksy, you started late. Adam, you said in sixth form, and then Keenan, when you talked about you sort of now down on and like looking at basketball a lot more.
Yep.
Who were those influences, and what was it about them that made you sort of get into the game a lot more? Like when you talk about the love of the game, and you've explained some of the reasons for that, who were the people that got you to that point?
I'll jump in there, bro, since I've written down some notes. Yeah, so this is just going back to sixth form, kind of really new to basketball. Actually went away to my first ever tournament with Gizzy boys. Played with the Pyer brothers, so it was Ambrose and Jamal. And we had a pretty talented team. There's a few other boys went on to, play for the Rising Suns and that. But just by default, we had the Pyer brothers, their dad, Eugene. He came along and coached us for that tournament. And I can remember like every game, it was right from the first game, and you know what teenagers are like, broody, grumpy, you always feel like you're playing terribly. And you'd be coming off the court, time out or end of a quarter, and you're coming off. And I just remember Eugene the first time, and you're expecting to get bollocksed, get yelled at, pick it up, play harder. And he's just so positive, just smiling, and just really came at us in a very encouraging way. And it was kind of really standoffish at first. You're like, hey, what's this guy on? But you kind of really just bought into the positivity of it. And I think that really helped me to really fall in love with the game, was just his approach to it. Was able to keep us as a team really, really positively focused, and through the good and bad. So he's probably one of those earlier influences for me. Going on from there, got a lot more serious in my seventh form, and we had Clive Kelly. He was the art teacher at Boys High, but he was Mr. Basketball back then. So Clive Kelly and Seamus Tahata. He had been to Church College and come back. He's in a wheelchair, but he kind of picked up, and so together they had those two kind of coaching us. And it was just, fantastic to be around that. I really learnt to understand what intensity looked like. But it was taking that step from being about fun to actually, hey, I actually really want to have a good crack at this, and learning how to play with intensity and effort. Can remember, days of trainings where Seamus would have us just up against the wall doing those wall sits. We'd do that for ages, and it was all about just seeing how long you could hang in there. So, it's just that kind of mindset, never give up. That's what I kind of learnt from those early days. Moving forward, because I kind of went away from playing organised ball there for a while, as you do, but coming back home, and I think I was lucky once I started kind of putting my hand up for coaching here in Gizzy, to see, we had Dwayne Tamatea, just his knowledge of the game and how to kind of run a game, being there, sitting on the sidelines next to him, learned a lot. And then our man Sparksy, just watching him kind of just, his knowledge, his ability to get a team kind of playing hard, awesome to watch. So for me, those are probably my key influences for now.
Just something I want to touch on with your kōrero, Adam, around having that fun in the game, and then that intensity comes into it. Do we lose the fun, or is the fun still there based on the challenges that you have with that intensity?
Yeah, that's a great question, eh? And I think that we definitely get muddled up with that. And I guess in the end, you can only kind of look back on your own personal experiences. I guess for me, I'm quite very competitive by nature. And so for me, and I don't know if this is a good thing or not, but I've always equated having fun with competing really hard. That's for me, I'm having a blast. It's interesting though, that fun and competitiveness, and maybe it's an age thing as well. You kind of at that 17, 18 years old, I think I was ready for it. I look back at rugby at primary school. Went to Kairi school. Back in the day, rugby was everything. And at the time that I was there, we'd had the wicker ball, which is still, it's like the Ranfurly Shield of Gisborne rugby, primary school. And Kaiti school had held the wicker ball for like 7-8 years, and I can still remember there was a lot of pressure that went with that as a kid. And it was just unfortunate. Our last game of rugby we played our foe from just down the road, Waikirikiri School. We used to go at it. It was awesome. And they beat us in my last game at primary school. I've still got guys that come up and talk about that game. It's like crack up, but it was, we lost. And I can remember we are coming off the field and we were all crying. And this was as a 10, 11-year-old. That's the kind of pressure that we'd been put under. Training every day. I'll probably be honest and say I kind of fell out of love with rugby. And that's probably a big part of that, was around that. And so maybe moving into basketball, it was something different. Like I kind of mentioned, age was probably a big part of it. And I was ready for that step into competitiveness. So it's a bit of a shame with the rugby, I think.
I think you're tapping on something interesting there, Wade, with that fun factor. And are the younger generation, are we so intent on just having fun? Because there's fun in the effort and there's fun in the challenge. I asked one young guy, would you rather beat a team by 60 points and just smoke them and just make it easy, or would you like to win by 1 point at the buzzer, close toe to toe? And he said, oh, definitely the 1 point. And I said, what about if you lost by 1 point? And he just went, oh, because that 1 point win is the toe to toe stuff that could go either way. And that's the challenge, the fun, the intensity. And then you move that to your training, do you just train and is it fun, or, do you put effort in to your training? And there's fun in there too, isn't there? But how do we bring that out, I suppose?
Yeah, that's always the challenge, It's the balance between knowing your athlete as well and what they perceive as fun and what they perceive as a challenge, or what they understand as a challenge, and then being able to marry that up. Yeah, it's a challenge for us as coaches. Like, how do we put it all together so that it's ticking off all those boxes for those kids that come and play? And I think, definitely, like when you mentioned, Adam, around that younger age group where the focus is basically on winning because there's like that pressure and everything. And that's when, a lot of kids just go, nah, I can't handle this. Sparksy, just keen to hear around your influence to get into, like, when you're a 20-year-old coming into basketball.
Yep, I suppose for me, my earliest memories were, I think I did get some court time for the Rising Suns. I was pretty much the orange bag man, but I'd go to trainings and there was no put downs from the crew at all, and I was just a little white fellow who couldn't jump, but there was no hassles. They involved me. Frank and the crew were always encouraging back in Tama's day as well. I'd get my 30 seconds on the court when they were up by 30.
Yeah.
But for me, I loved it and it was great. I loved the intensity and all that sort of stuff. And I think that was probably when the bug really stuck.
Was there anyone in particular that stood out for you, like that helped you get there?
Well, I suppose a big shout out to Anton Eady. He was the one who sort of got me involved at the start, even when I didn't show any great signs of promise. He was just a bro and brought me along and kept me coming. So for me, it was the general, everyone was just sort of all having a good time and we all had a good time together. Keenan?
Just when I started high school, I was fortunate enough at a time to have coaches that have heavily impacted our basketball community. One being Frank Russell. So I started boys high and he was there, and he comes with a lot of passion, a lot of enthusiasm. Everyone knows all the sayings he does, and he's a local legend. And after I was lucky to be coached by him, Tama moved in. So I was fortunate enough to have Tama as well, and around the same time, Ray brought what I thought a good community with the Horota Hoops Club. So a lot of those players I still play with today are good friends with still to this day. So that community that Ray created there, it still goes hard right now. But yeah, like starting high school, that's when I really knuckled down into basketball. What I've already mentioned, like watching the Suns, I could see a pathway. That's those games you watch, like that's where you wanted to be. That's what you were aiming for as a young player. I developed well under those coaches, and towards the end of high school, that second division Sun stuff was coming to an end. And I remember, I got to play coached by Tama in some of those Suns games, and that was good. So those three coaches, and Sparksy too. Sparksy was part of all that. And that just adds to that community again. Like we still go hard today, coaching together now, playing together still. So yeah, I've had some good influences in that time.
Nice. I want to throw a question out around culture, team culture, and Keenan, you've talked around like community as well. As coaches, how do we create a good team culture? Because as we just mentioned before around that fun, challenging intensity, trying to balance all that as coaches, like how do we create that culture to be able to ask those questions around what level of intensity we can get to, how we can still make it fun and stuff like that? Like how do you build a culture within your team?
Yeah, I think a few points, getting to know your players, getting to know who they are. I think a lot of it focus off the court as well. Like, so getting to know your players, their families, their circumstances, stuff like that. Creating positive training environments, like, they feel all right to make mistakes and they can learn from that. Yeah.
And those are big answers, and they're good answers too, Keenan, because I really struggle in that area. But like you say, just to make a training where you can make mistakes, because that's part of learning, not being shot down for it, is huge. So yeah, good points.
Yeah, team culture is a huge thing, eh? And I think we'll all be in the same boat. When you have a team that comes together, it's a lot of planning's got to go into it initially. And I know we all do that. And for me, for all of us, I think, the goal is you want a team that comes together to be a team. And so it's trying to create that environment right from the get-go. So for me, I like to start off with off-court stuff. It's just about us sitting down as a team, try and push across the idea that, hey, in this setting, we're all equal. I might be the coach, but your guys' opinions and your input's really important to how we might function as a team, and try and just really get their buy-in from whoever they might be, a team of boys, team of girls. And the power of questions, I find, is really, really helpful. You just throw out their questions. What do we want as a team? What does that look like? And probably recently, in the last couple of years, I've really started to talk about, what's our values as a team? What are we going to value? And how might we go about kind of showing that value for us? So, for example, last couple of years, we've come up with about 3 values, and I've tried to kind of just implement them and then get the teams to translate what those values might mean for them. So, for example, a kike. So last year, this is a bunch of under 13 boys, but they really bought into this stuff. We came up with 3 values. I'll call them values. We kind of called them a team mantra as well. And there was ka aroha ki te kēmu, ka aroha ki a tātou, and kia ngākau māhaki. And because a lot of the boys came from a kura kaupapa setting, they really were able to kind of grasp onto those as concepts and got them to translate them for us as a team. I had my ideas about what they might look like, but for the team as a whole, for them to hear what they might mean for them. And for those of us that may not kind of understand, it was talking about, love for the game, love for each other, and be humble at all times. And so, we talked about that stuff and got the boys to say, okay, what does love for the game mean? What does that look like? And then it was awesome. They'd start talking about things like, who's involved in the game? And they'd talk about, you got score benches, got your referees, got the supporters, both teams. Okay, if we love the game, how are we treating those people? And it really got them thinking about that stuff. And I'll always come back to this. This was one of the tournaments we went to at the end of last year. Opposition fans coming up to these boys and saying, love the way you guys play, love the way you treat the opposition. My son, he got knocked over, he was hurt. You guys went and picked him up, looked after him, made sure he was okay. And, win or lose, you want to win, but it was that stuff that was, I was most proud about with our boys. It's that kind of thing.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool to see. I think that's something that's really important, is to be able to take that time. And I know it's hard. Like, we did a Voice of the Coach survey, and one of the main challenges in there is time, like for coaches. And I know that's like everyone's got full-time jobs and stuff like that. And we turn up and we go and play the game, or we coach the game. But it's just affording that time beforehand off the court or off the field or whatever to spend with the athletes to be able to understand what they are after. I think that's hugely important. And then you can, identify what they want, what values they have, and then package it all into a team culture. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, time's big. If you come back to Adam's first value, the karoha ki te kimu, if you love the game and love where you are, like, you'll enjoy that time that you're sacrificing to be with your team. If you're not loving where you are that time, you won't enjoy that time as much. So,
because how do you guys do it? I'd be interested to hear. And like, as a coach and as like, you work, like Sparks, you got your own business. Adam, you're working. Keenan, you're working. Like, how do you? And I know you're probably going to probably say the love of the game, but like, how do you do it? How do you manage it?
You survive. Yeah. What can you say? I mean,
you love the game, but you're passionate about providing opportunities for our tamariki, our rangatahi. I think it's more than just the game itself, giving those experiences, like all the other impacts that you have on these kids. Yeah.
I think that's important. There was an important piece you said in there around like it's more than the game. So I think, I understand, like, it is tough for coaches out there and it is tricky, but if you're looking at the bigger picture rather than just the game, I think that's where the important things come out.
Got a great saying.
What's your saying, Sparksy?
Which one, Barry? Which one?
Kids in sport stay out of court.
No, your better people one.
Oh, well, yeah. Our GBA mantra is, well, that I hang on to. No one else accepts it, but making better people, not just better ballers. So, yes, we want to attune their physical attributes to a game of basketball and stuff and bouncing a ball around the court, but it's so much more than that. It's like Adam said, awareness of everyone around you who's brought you to this place, journey, applying yourself, all those golden rules.
Like when we're sitting down at the gym on a Friday night running secondary school basketball, like what else would those people be doing on a Friday night? They could be anywhere else, but they're in the gym playing ball, like just giving them, I guess, an opportunity to do good.
A positive outlet.
Yeah.
Something that we talked about before when we looked at our origin stories around that engaging, and like Adam, you touched on it, there's different times back in the day when we were kids. It was like, go outside, see you later at dinner time type thing, like go and find something to do. And like, and it's a different world now. Like it is, like there's technology and there's all that sort of stuff that's influencing kids these days. How do we engage kids today?
Well, I just wanted to bring back to the point about culture and hopefully tie it in, but we struggled a lot when we had teams where there was not enough players, so the team was already set, so there was no one banging on the door. And so people went, oh, you have to have me. And we found that the culture from that was rather toxic's probably too strong a word, but very self-orientated rather than team-orientated. I think we're finding a lot more positivity now when people realize, oh, there's someone else at the door if I want to throw a hissy fit. So that ties back into the question that you made that Adam's now going to answer.
Yeah.
I guess if there's more people fighting for a spot in the team, it should make you work harder, right? Get you off that technology and go out instead of playing basketball in the game. Go out and play basketball on the hoop.
But the next one is like, how do you get them off that technology to come and play basketball? What are we doing in basketball to make, or what are we doing in sport? I suppose that's a general question that goes out to everybody out there in Sportland within Tairāwhiti. Like, what are we doing, like, in terms of how do we get them to that point where they're trying to get into the team and stuff like that?
I think we've talked about getting the bug, like there's a love for sport, isn't it? Where you're applying yourself, and basketball's pretty good because you shoot and you either make or you miss, and it's defined. Sport is probably all like that in some way. So that's the reality. Whereas in a game, hey, I can just reboot and we're off again. There's a love in our natural bodies to be able to compete, isn't there? We love that. We're drawn to it. I mean, people are taking the easy way when they sit in front of their screens and can just push reset and off they go again. So we're trying to promote that, aren't we? To give them as many opportunities through all sports to have that moment.
I'll just pick up on that word opportunity, Sparks. I think that's a really big one in the basketball space. And I think we're on the cusp of something great here in Tairāwhiti. So if we're talking about opportunity, it's having resources firstly, and we're really starting to see that sort of come about in our region now. You know, you just got to go down to Boys High after school hours on the outdoor tennis courts, and they've got there's at least 6 hoops down there, and some evenings it's just unbelievable. Just watching, you know, the number of people, families, kids, they're all down there just having a run around. And if you're starting to look across our region, that's popping up more and more. You know, you got the hoops down at the Waikanai, a number of the schools now. There's the hoops and schools programs and all of that are taking off, and we're seeing a lot of good quality hoops going around up the coast and you know, in town here as well. So that's just giving that opportunity. Sparks has talked about developing that bug for the game, you know, just loving it. And I think that's kind of where we've all come in. Just once again, it's providing those opportunities for kids to learn how to play the game. And, you know, big props to GBA. They're a bunch of volunteers doing their best, trying to provide as many opportunities as they can for our kids. And it's a real tricky one, because when you look around, it's never enough, you know. So we're kind of in that space now. It's exciting. I talked about, you know, I think we're on the cusp of some greatness here, and it's just being in a space to be able to provide more and more opportunities for our kids, because I think they all really, there's a lot of kids that love the game, want to play it. They want to just play for fun. They want to just muck around. You know, it's an awesome game where you can just have a shoot around with your mates and that. But there seems to be lots of more and more opportunities for kids who want to play organised ball, which is different. And that's about them wanting to test themselves and see what they're made of. Once again, coming back to the opportunity word, that's a space I think that as a community, you know, we can hopefully continue to grow and build on what's currently here.
There was a study done, and there's papers to prove that. I didn't bring them today, but they built an indoor stadium in their area. The crime rate disappeared, literally zero. Test me on it. It's true. It's out there. Straight
Perfect.
up.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. Yeah, and like definitely noticeable. Boys High, I know when I've gone down there and done hockey training on the turf, and we've had the turf, and as soon as we've got off the turf, it has just been like inundated with ballers. Like they're just like the whole turf is just covered, and it's just awesome to see. I know School Sport NZ put some stats out a little while back, and like basketball is one of the fastest growing sports. Like they were putting on tournaments after tournaments just to deal with the amount of teams coming through, and it's just, you know, you just need a ball and a couple of mates and you're playing a game. We tested something out this time. We went out online and onto Facebook and asked our audience if they could come up with some questions for you guys as coaches. Thank you, Lara, for posting up 3 questions for us, which is great. One of them, and we just alluded to it before around that engaging kids and how we can get them active and stuff. But one of the questions that Lara put forward was, what are the key things you do as coaches to draw the best out of your players? Keenan, do you want to start that one off?
Yeah, I think first and foremost is to know your player. I think you draw out of your players based on who they are. I've just written down here four players that I've coached in the past that I would probably speak to differently and coach differently based on their personalities. For example, I've got one here that probably won't take much to being, lack of better, like yelled at or something like that, like softly spoken. So that's how I would try and get the best out of him, would be softly spoken to him. I've written one down, a player here that won't take well to multiple feedback points. So just saying like one thing at a time and getting him to try and complete that, and then giving him another one. I've written one here that you'd need to be more assertive with. Like he needs that to be or yelled at, I guess. Then I've read another one down here that probably can take multiple feedback at a time. I can give them heaps of things to do, and that's how the best to get out of that player. So yeah, I'll just go back to, I think, knowing who your players are and how you can and how they operate, and if you know them, you can probably get the best out of them. Yeah,
Definitely that's a winner. For me, I suppose I'm more systems based. So therefore the structure there, you're hoping that people see their own improvement through training and they go, oh, I've got better at this. So you're trying to give them examples where they can see that they've got better. Therefore, then it's self-perpetuating because they're going, oh, I've put effort in and I have a reward. I'm more skillful. The more skill you have, the more fun you have. There's a lot of systems that hopefully there that show people that they're getting better, and the competitions, they're competing and finishing and scoring and playing better.
How do you show them? Is it video? Is it feedback? Like how do they themselves understand that they're getting better?
It's a big hammer to the head. No, I don't show them anything.
can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
On your point on systems, do you base your systems on the players you have in your team? So different team, would you do a different system?
That's a very good question. No, but I'm probably not good enough to do that. It was funny. Like the time I learnt that, I was training a young fella and he was putting a shot into the hoop and he's counting his makes and his misses, and I was watching him and he actually started getting it wrong and thought he got more than he did. So it's the kids get almost deluded in their own greatness. I suppose maybe we're all like that, but reality is the greatest teacher. We go away to regional competitions and stuff and we get our bottom smacked regularly, and that's just the reality because we're not that good. And we've sat in the van on the way home saying, oh, okay, what's our work-ons? What are we going to do? Oh, I've got to get fitter. Choice, bro. Yeah. Unfortunately, I can't go up the hill with them. So when they don't get fitter, well, that's reality. Does that answer the question?
It's a bit harsh, but
Yes. But that's what happens.
So hockey, similar situation. We go away to Super 8, we come 8th. Like I've talked to Keenan many times. We've come back from games and stuff and sat down with him and chatted to him about it as well. I know winning is great, and I like at the end of the day, I'd love it if our team could win. But like you've got to look at those positives and those little things that can actually get them to that point of becoming better.
I've had that same chat. The quote that I used, see if I can get it. Success is not based on results, but on effort. 100% effort is 100% success. So there's goal there. Do we get so caught up on the wins? And if you don't try or you don't put the effort in, you're not going to get the win. There's great quotes about that as well. So therefore we can transfer the winning to effort. And that's where we can learn so much and do so much more.
Focus on that process rather than the outcomes or the results.
Yes.
The results at the end of the day, it's the process. And if you're following the process, things are going to happen from there.
Isn't there a great song? Not about the mountaintop, but the climb.
can you sing it for us?
Okay, here we go.
I'll chuck my 2 cents in. So, yeah, in that space as well, and I know we all do this as coaches, and it's around that whole goal setting. As an example, as we're heading into, say, a big tournament, I like to sit down individually with each player, and it's all about them. I make them bring in a pen and a paper and just ask them, like, what is it you want to get out of this tournament? What do you want to get better at? And we'll have a conversation about that and what that looks like, and I'll get them to write down a couple of things, usually 2 or 3 at the most. And it's a good reference point. We're able to come back to that regularly during the tournament and just check in with them and say, hey, how are you going with your goals? Where we at? And it's kind of just really helpful, helps to keep them focused. And it takes away from the winning, which I think, we all get kind of a bit over focused on that. And it's the other important part of that is it's that whole thing around not wanting them to feel failure, like they're a failure, but to be able for them to track and say, hey, yes, I wanted to rebound more. As that was my goal. How am I going? Yeah, I'm rebounding really well. Yes, we're getting our butts kicked, but individually I'm doing my job. I'm contributing to the team. So, there's that whole, you should feel good about that because you're getting better at the game. So that's kind of on an individual basis. And on a team basis, I find, hey, you've got to get creative sometimes. So this is just an example. We went to a tournament not long ago, a few months ago. And as a team, we just weren't quite gelling. 10 boys, in terms of how you go in a basketball setting, you got your better players that you roll with. And then you've got some role players who kind of come in during the game and they might, contribute something and serve a purpose in that way. And this particular tournament, it just wasn't clicking for us. So as you often do as a coach, sleepless night, trying to think of ways we could come together better as a team. And it was just a random kind of thought we came up with, where we went, okay, this isn't working, let's chuck it out. We're gonna kind of set up two separate teams. So we went 2 teams of 5 and got them to go away, and you guys had come up with their own individual team names, and we set some kind of targets, I guess, or challenges. It was like, okay, we're going to track these 3 things during the game. And at the end of the game, the team that gets the most points out of those 3 things, you get chocolates. And the 3 things it was around effort stuff. So nothing to do with points. It was the team that got the most rebounds, that had the most transition fast breaks. So that's important because that's all about running hard. And then the team that got the most consecutive 3 stops. So that's all about playing great defense, And so we counted those all up, put it into play. They built up their own kind of team culture within the overall team, and we went really well, which was great. That was awesome. To the point where at the end of the day, a kid coming up saying, that's the best I've ever played, and that's the best team I've ever played with, So for me, that was a fantastic win, regardless of the results.
Had he lost then, Adam?
What's that?
Had he lost in that game?
No, we won by ridiculous score, but it was just seeing, and they looked like they were having a blast out there, and it was all about their effort. They were running hard for each other. That's what you want to get to, eh? So yeah, the lesson there is, hey, would that kind of approach work for another team? Maybe, maybe not. But the learning I took out of that is, hey, you've got to stay on your toes and you've got to get creative sometimes, because it's about, I guess, trying to create those situations different for kids, uncomfortable definitely, because that's about challenging them, eh?
There's a couple of things in there. One, how old were the kids?
13 to 15.
Even that on the self-reflection around coming away saying it's the best I've ever played and that's the most awesome team. Having that is definitely massive. And then obviously as a coach, when things aren't going well, how do we respond, react, and actually change it up and as you say, just think something completely different? Is there anything else the two of you, Sparksy or Keenan, that you've done in terms of something that hasn't been going well and you've had to reset, change it up, and how you've gone through that process?
For me, I'm going to say weathering the storm with them is big. To stand there on the court when we're all getting our bottom smacked is we're in this together. Not distancing myself from them and saying, "Oh, you guys all suck," and you don't listen. I'm there trying to help them right to the end, and we're in it together.
I guess as a coach, you have to be adaptable. I think you go into every game with a game plan, and maybe that game doesn't turn out how you expected it to be. So just along the same lines of Sparks, weathering the storm together, but talking to your team, questioning what's your guys' opinions now? Do you have any ideas on how we move forward here, change it up? My plan I had is not working. Maybe as a coach, you've got to be more vulnerable to that stuff and get feedback from your players, and how can we change this up and try it out and work together. Yeah.
I remember going to national tournaments and these super duper teams like North Harbour, their coaches would the groom would come back from a huddle, and the huddle time for us is we've got so much to say and what are we going to do, and the coaches would go away and let the team have time to themselves. And that just blew my mind, because it was my time. I need to tell you guys what to do. But the coaches were trying to say, hey, you guys sort this out, or what are your thoughts? And then they'd come in later on and have a little chat with them, get their feedback. So Keenan's got a good point there, you know. Hey, what are we doing here? What can we do? It's probably quite a big one.
Maybe the players on the court are seeing the game different to how you are on the sideline. Getting everyone's voices could be important to changing how the game's going.
I think that's a great point. So for hockey, obviously I coach boys high and I play for Lytton Old Boys, and the boys always want me to play when we play against Lytton Old Boys. They want me out on the field. And it was honestly, like, it was probably one of the coolest things I've done, because when I was actually out there watching them play, it's cool seeing in a different perspective as well. And like, as a player, like it's hugely important, I think, because they're out there, they're living and breathing it out there. And if they can see it all, giving them that opportunity to talk at the halftime, at the quarter time, whatever, is a great concept to be able to give those kids that the power. You know, you're empowering them to be, you know, if we talk around our team culture, if we talk around our environments and stuff like that, and it's all about the athlete, we're trying to be athlete centered, like, why not give them that power back to them to say, hey, have a chat, like, let's see what's going on. It just gives them a little bit more responsibility, a little bit more time to analyze the game or look at the game differently. And you know, you're growing leaders, like, aren't you? Like, you know, better people. We're always trying to grow leaders, trying to
Learning.
learning. Nice. Another question that Lara's come through was, do you think that game stats should be shared openly with the team or kept between coaches? Now, I know Sparksy from Little Birdie told me that you're quite a stats man.
Would love to be, yes. Yeah.
Any comment on that question?
Well, basketball is really good at that because it's got stats galore, hasn't it? It's got a whole table and stuff and apps and stuff we can do. I've found the kids love it, probably for the wrong reasons, but they love to see, you know, I've scored the most. But there's like an efficiency rating as well. So someone who may score a lot might not be, you know, might have done a lot of turnovers as well. I'm all about the rocks of reality. Look at that stat chart and read and weep, baby.
Depends what you're using the stats for, hey?
Yeah.
Just like what Sparksy said, a lot of them will focus on points, and that's not the only thing that impacts a game. I tried to shy away from the stats, but if I use them, it's for a reason. For example, I'll use the stats to show that someone's rebounded well, and that's how they are impacting the game. Just because they don't have as many points, they're still impacting the game. Maybe a point guard might do a lot of assists and hardly any turnovers, so they're impacting the game in that way. It just depends what you're using them for, really.
Yeah, totally agree with the boys. Yeah, there's good stats you can share, and stats you definitely want to steer away from. So, you know, as Sparks sort of touched on, and Keenan, you know, kids want to know how many points they've scored, and as a coach, couldn't care less. You know, so it's about trying to find those stats where you can get the magic out of your team and really promoting those. Rebounding, defensive stops, how many times you're sprinting in transition, you know, so literally counting those. And we've done that a number of times in different teams, you know, you place value on those. You put prizes in place and you say, hey, the kids that have got the most rebounds, you're getting a chocolate bar. Who's run the most in transition? Here you go, here's a chocolate, all that kind of stuff, you know, and trying to get them to focus on that stuff. It's a never-ending kind of challenge because the kids always want to come back and know, hey, how many points did I score? But yeah, it's a yes and a no in terms of sharing stats. If they're the good stats, like from a coach's perspective, yeah, definitely. As we've said, points, not so much.
Depends on the age group as well, I would say. I don't think you'd be taking stats at a primary school. If you are, I'd like to know why. But yeah, you can use them to benefit your coaching. Yeah,
They're definitely there to identify trends. Like within hockey, the only time we get to see stats is like if you're in the, you know, future Black Sticks or like those NZ18s and the 21s, and then like up in the obviously the Black Sticks. But they're definitely there to, you know, we can see where people are scoring goals the most, like in around that 7 meter mark within the goalies. So now we train goalies to be able to have those skills to be able to defend those goal scoring shots from there. But yeah, it is a tricky one. I just want to touch on something that you said, Adam, around that extrinsic motivation around, like, you know, chocolates for kids that are doing well and stuff like that. How do we look at the intrinsic ways of motivation? So actually them going out there to do it for the love of the game or for them just to get better. Can we work towards that a bit more, or like, what do you guys think about that?
I think that's the ultimate goal. Firstly, is to create a player that loves the game, because if they love the game, when they leave training, all they're thinking about is the game. So they want to get off the game. This isn't a perfect world. Go shoot, go practice. They can't wait for the next training. They can't wait to play again. So I think, that's a very good point. That's the first goal I think you should have, is getting a player to love where they're at, their game, their team, culture, all that kind of stuff.
Then the measuring, so they can see that they're getting better. So their love for the game, they've gone home, they've worked, and they've got better. So those go hand in hand.
Do we need stats for that, or do we need like feedback?
It's feedback. Like when I'm seeing the kids on a Sunday morning, I can say, well, someone's been training, and the beam of smile they give you saying, yes, you're right. And to be noticed to have got better is pretty massive. It's a huge plus for them.
Yeah, agree with that, Sparksy. Yeah, that's where feedback comes in, eh? And this is probably kind of an example. A kid's come off the court, I've subbed him out. You're seeing he's frustrated out there. And maybe he's blaming the referee, calls aren't going his way. He's playing hard, getting called for touch foul, say as an example, and I've subbed this kid off. He stomps down the end of the bench and, he's brooding, unhappy. Give him a minute, just get over it. And so what's the feedback in that situation, What do we want for our kids in the end? Do we want them to be behaving like that? Hey, there's a lot of times things don't go your way. How do you respond to that? And it's having that conversation to say, hey, look, you're trying your hardest. It's fine. You're doing awesome. Yeah, you've made mistakes, but I don't care about mistakes. And that's probably just something I think we've all got in terms of our coaching philosophy. Mistakes are okay. It's how you respond to those mistakes that I'm more interested in, and that's what I'm looking for. You turn the ball over, I'm not going to sub you off for that. But if you hang your head and you mope around and then they sprint down the court and score, I'll sub you off for that. You know what I mean? So it's trying to just give them that kind of feedback to say, hey, stay in the fight. You're doing well. Keep your head up. Don't get so frustrated. Trying to teach them that. Well, and how do you teach them that? You put them back in the game and see how they respond to that situation, because it's going to come up again,
Another example of the measure, I suppose, is like I had one player. I remember it because the parent came to me and said, look, he didn't get any game time, or he didn't play as much as he should have, and I felt bad as a coach, and that was the level of where the player is. But I had the joy of going back to that parent in probably a couple of years and saying, look at him now, he's starting 5, he's solid. For that kid to be able to reflect on himself and say, look how far I've come by the effort or whatever, he's fought that battle and overcome. So that can be applied to anything in your life. Hard times come, put in some effort.
There's a question I've got here. Do you think it's best to provide feedback or let the athletes solve the problems by themselves?
Both. I think you need to give them a chance to figure things out. If they cannot, you can provide some feedback, and just like Adam said, put them back out there to see if they can work on it.
Yeah, for me, I like to I'll watch a kid, I watch them all, and I like to just let them figure it out. You can see them tussling with that. It's not going right, but that's a big part of it, especially because I tend to coach the younger age groups a lot at the moment. So there's so much going on for them. And then do they need another voice in there kind of telling them what they're doing wrong? Probably not. So yeah, definitely lean towards that. And if there is feedback, sometimes you've got to bite your lip big time, because you want to just unload and say, hey, you've got it, you're not doing this, not doing that, blah, 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 so you've got to bite your lip and sometimes just walk away and let it be. Hey.
What method would we use to help athletes solve the problems?
Well, I'm jumping in there because there's the moments when you're teaching technique, i.e. shooting, and you say, hey, you just should work on this, and they adjust and they get it in. So the results are right there straight away. So that's a quick time frame. And then you're trying to make them aware of how badly they're missing when they haven't changed their techniques.
So when we let athletes solve their problems, we can tell them what they're doing, or we can actually guide them in terms of giving them questions to make them think about what's happening.
Yes.
Do you guys do that in any part of your feedback?
Yeah, so if they've done something on the court, then you can talk to them and say, "What did you notice in that last 5 minutes of you being on the court?" You know, and they say, "Oh, I did this. How can you change it or do better, or what would you change about that?" You know, so they could solve the problems themselves with asking the right questions.
And jumping in there as well, because it's harping back to a point that you made that we learnt from you about letting them discover it themselves. So when they're shooting, I say, well, what felt wrong then? And they'll go, oh, it was my follow through. And then I go, yes, hallelujah. That journey is the best because they're taking on board themselves. I suppose in saying that, you still got to have a bit of structure there to say, well, what is the right technique? So you've got to establish that, and then, right, well, did that feel right? No. What was it? Oh, it was this. And so they can go away and self-adjust.
Just along there, like, you're not always going to be with those players. So if you give them the tools to know what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong, whether you're there or not, they can develop by themselves or with their friends, or wherever they're at.
Yep.
Yeah, the power of questions, it's awesome, amazing tool. And another strategy I've kind of throw in there from time to time is kind of like a deflection type method. So say, for example, you can see our teams, they're all getting frustrated and it's affecting the team dynamic. You know, everyone's getting upset, things aren't going well. Am I gonna talk about that? No, I'd rather say, hey, how many high fives have you given your teammate today? You know, kind of just focus on that instead. You know, such and such just made a mistake. Did we go and give him a high five, lift him up? And, you know, just try and get the kids to think differently about a situation. And it's just trying to change their mindsets through deflection. Just, okay, I've got to be more positive. And so just as an example, we kind of put that in, and then, you know, kids are just getting into more high fives, which was cool. And one kid in particular, I noticed, you know, early on in the tournament, he'd get down on himself when he made a mistake, which, you know, it kind of happens. Just by kind of taking focus away that, you still keep an eye on all your kids. And by our last couple of games, he'd come up with his own kind of way of resetting, if you could call it that. He'd make a mistake and he'd just clap his hands really hard. And he was doing it a lot. I was like, what's he up to? And it was his way of resetting, just say, yes, I stuffed up, clap, refocus straight away, do what he needed to do right there and then, you know, whatever it was. Just focus back on defense, go for a rebound, or just, you know, just get back on as quickly as he could. That was awesome, you know, in terms of, I think, just seeing him develop his own way of kind of dealing with when things didn't go well.
Nice. Love it. Last question from Lara is, how do you manage players who want to play or train and improve, but whānau can't support them to get them to games and trainings without offending the whānau or seeming too pushy?
Team culture, like we talk about team culture, but part of the team is not just a player, coach, manager, it's the whānau that support them. So even that is part of all the culture. So maybe it's starting off the season, meeting parents as well and guardians, trying to build that community there. I'm fortunate enough that with the teams I've coached, that parent connection has been good. So if someone cannot make trainings, you know, there's usually some other player that can support them in that. There's also, with like finance stuff, a lot of support out there from the school, where I've been at Boys High, that provide that financial help. But yeah,
I think one of the blessings of Gisborne is that possible, you know, like I would always take a few home with me after trainings, and I don't think it was a huge financial outlay for petrol. You know, it was a good time to chinwag as well. Is that possible, you know, to say, hey, listen, I can pick you up? I mean, one player didn't make a game just the other day, you know, because he was out of town or out of the country. If you'd rung half an hour earlier, I would have laddered out to get him. If you offer that to them, you know.
I remember growing up for Boys High trainings, I lived on Kaiti side, Frank driving in from Wainui would pick us up from KT school, like from early morning trainings. For us that couldn't get to the other side of town, he would pick us up. Sometimes he would drive right past us, he'd forget. But I guess it just goes back to that knowing your athlete again and their circumstances and what ways you can support them, not just on the court, but off as well.
Yeah, can't really add too much to that. Yeah, where issues do come up, whatever they may be, the only thing that I try to do is just get on top of that stuff quickly, try and deal with it. And that's where that whole aroha kind of approach comes in, guys? It's you're going to that whānau and in a way where it's all about aroha, it's all about the kid. You might have to kind of raise some difficult issues, but I think as long as you're going in there and you've got those intentions, it might get a little frosty, but that's just part of being a coach. You've got to nut up, I guess, if there's a right way of putting it, and be up for those difficult conversations at times.
I suppose it's looking for that support as well. It's not just the responsibility of the coach. Like the coach can reach out to the school, can reach out to the wider family, could even reach out to the association. I think it's like looking at what the support network looks like. I know parents is another topic that comes up in our Voice of the Coach survey around challenges for coaches. I suppose the most important one is that we need to understand parents as well. Like you mentioned, like if we talk around, like we ask the athletes questions, we could be asking parents questions as well. We don't need to fix the parents. We just need to work alongside the parents. So I think you have to understand that what's going on within their lives as well. And it may be like, if it is that they can't get to these trainings, there's obviously a valid reason or a reason for it. How do we work around that? How do we make it accessible for the kid to get to training? It's the engagement piece, I suppose. Like we engage with our youth, so why not engage with parents and whānau as well? I think that's cool. Yeah. All right, we're winding down, boys, so we've only got a couple more questions. How has failure or apparent failure set you up for later success?
Oh, here we go. So I'll take you back. This is just an example. Mao Young tournament, I was coaching girls under 17s and wasn't going very well from time to time. And this is my experience from coaching boys, and this is, from previous to that, from time to time, I found, I don't know if this is a good thing or not, I found that it was sometimes useful just to kind of lose your rag a wee bit. And it was boys, as long as you don't do it all the time, you got a reaction. And that's often why you do it, is just to see, okay, just need to get these kids to just snap out of it, and just did that with this girls team. They just were playing horrifically. So I thought, okay, well, I'll try this. And we played worse, And that was a big learning for me with girls. And from that, I went away. I was like, what's going on? And that was me just really getting to understand, girls think differently to boys. Boys get fun out of competing really hard, and it's not quite the same for girls. They got to be having fun to then want to compete hard. And so for me, that kind of, I learned, got to create an environment where they're just having a good time firstly, You can't just go in and just expect a reaction. And yeah, I think they all took it personally, girls. Took it personal, thought I hated them, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and like I said, so we didn't play well. But from that failure, it really forced me to kind of look at myself and look at ways that I might go about coaching girls in a different way, because obviously coaching boys and girls, you can't do it the same. That's what I kind of learnt from that situation. It's still a work in progress, by the way, but that's something I've really taken on board.
What's the great quote we learnt this year about the girls? That was a big one for me. Girls play well when they feel good. Boys play well to feel good.
Yep.
Is that right?
I think you've butchered that.
Thank you. Let's rephrase that. Girls
have to feel good to play good. Boys have to play good
to feel good.
To feel good.
Yeah. I think that's what's close to that.
Say it again.
Yeah,
we can edit that.
Come on, you got to say. Because you said it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you looking it up, Adam?
Go, boys.
Oh, yeah,
girls have
Wayne
to
Smith
feel
quote
good
that I love
to
to
play
use.
good. Boys play good to feel good. Is that it? And that's huge for us. Like we and not being a female, but the girls, they all like to have the same coloured hair ties in their hair and stuff, and that, and I used to look at that, the coach, and say, you're wasting time, we should be talking drills and tactics, and they'd all do their hair together and stuff, and that was them feeling good, together, and that's magical with the females. The boys would just beat each other up and, go and have a great game. So, yeah, that was huge for us to learn, wasn't it?
Yeah, very much so. Here we go. This was the great Wayne Smith. He talked about men need to play well to be able to be happy and enjoy life. Women need to be happy and enjoying life to be able to play well. So that just talks about a totally different approach you've got to take.
Yeah. Nice reflection.
I'm going to jump in there on the failure issue and just say every storm runs out of rain.
That's deep, Sparksy, deep.
So we've, you go away to tournaments and you take the losses, and it's not such a big deal, like it's not the be all and end all. So that threat of performance or results becomes nothing. It's just refreshing water on the ground now, rather than a hailstorm of underperformance.
As they say, the sun still comes up the next day, doesn't it?
Exactly.
All right, boys, the finale. Big question. What does the value of sport mean to you?
When good men do nothing, evil prevails. Evil prevails when good men do nothing. Bad things occur when we sit and do nothing. Sport is my way of doing something. Like Keenan said, like on a Friday when we're watching down at the YMCA and the kids are all having a great time blasting, you ask that question, where would they be if they weren't there tonight? Maybe some would be at home, but some would be out at the wrong homes.
And I was fortunate enough that people gave me opportunities growing up to play a sport. So that was one of the reasons why I took up coaching. Was I thought it was my time to do the same to the younger generation. So that's one thing for me, is just providing those opportunities. If you're not going to do it, who else is? Providing opportunities just to grow as people, not just as the player. And the other thing is just the experiences as well. Like, you'll look back on your experiences playing sport and you'll remember that stuff for life. Also, the opportunities, like for me, they're still coming now. Like, I don't think I'd be in this job without the experiences I've had in my sporting career, and the people I've met has probably led me to being right here now. Like, doing this podcast right now is probably because of the sport I've played, and still gaining new experiences to this day. Yeah.
Okay, so another moment is like, sorry, I'm jumping in there.
Go for it.
I do the occasional reffing and stuff, and when you have like 10 men and 10 on the sideline as well, and they're all just fully engaged and pumping. And, we're talking big guys running up and down this court at 100%, and they're physically, and I'm just running on the sideline saying, hey, this is great. They're all having a blast, and they're fully going 100 miles an hour. It's great. It's great. That's what Keenan says, the experience, that they're challenging themselves and hard at it.
Bringing people together.
Yeah.
You'll meet a lot of new people, with running the leagues and the coaching and all the people you met through that. Yeah.
Yep. Also, sport is the time, and I think we've lost this because we focus on the W's, but sport is the time when you go, hey, I'm bringing my A game. I'm bringing all I've got to the table. How good are you? You bring your A game, I'll bring my A game. And how, at the end of it, well, you were the better. And that's when you shake hands and say, well done. And the other person who was better says, well, thank you for coming, because I've had a great time as well. I may have won, but without you, I would have been sitting at home. So there's the whole symbiotic relationship there and we lose that. I'm bringing my A game to the table. So sport, that's what sport's about, isn't it?
Oh, this is probably getting a bit deep and meaningful. I think we've kind of gone down that road anyway. Value of sport, I just think there's, great lessons for life. a big word that kind of jumps out for me, and it gets thrown around a lot. Don't like using it, but it's around that resilience, you know. I think about my coaching these days, and I mean, basketball coaching, it's such a technical sport. There's a lot you can focus on. There's a lot of different ways you can get things done. And I've kind of really tried to just pare back my technical coaching, try and make the game as simple as possible. And it's kind of led me down a different pathway where I'm trying, with that in mind, really try and just focus on the kids and trying to make them a lot more resilient. So timeouts in between quarters, we spend a lot of time just talking about that kind of stuff. You know, things aren't going well. How are we responding to that? And it's really about that, just trying to get the kids to change their mindsets. I think, you know, maybe it's just the age we're in. Kids get down on themselves a lot, blame themselves when things aren't going well. We don't want them in that space. You know, we want them to be focused positively on trying to have a good impact on the game, on their teammates and all that kind of stuff. And so that's, for me, that's where I've really tried to start changing and focusing my coaching is around that space. Couldn't give two stuffs how the game's going. Really focusing on how our kids are responding to tough situations, and trying to promote kind of different ways of reacting to that, you know. So that's been a big learning for me and a big change. Yeah, it leads you down a path very challenging at times because, as we've talked about already, you want to be hands-on and really pushing stuff, but sometimes lessons don't come from that. You've just got to let stuff unfold, you know, and be there to pick up the pieces after. That's all. That's life though, eh? You know what I mean? And if there's anything, that's what I want out. That's what I see as where sport is valuable, because it's got those lessons for you that'll kind of carry you through life. I hope so anyway.
Beautiful.
Nice. Great place to end it. This chat has been, honestly, absolutely amazing. I've loved it. And this was a new thing I wanted to do. I wanted to bring 3 coaches into a room and just shoot the breeze and see what we can come up with. There was a loose framework around it, but I think we went all over the place, which was nice. Touched on a lot of topics, but absolutely, Keenan, Sparksy, Adam, I loved our chat. I appreciate the time that you spend within sport, having guys like you. It's to the benefit of sport and tairāwhiti. So thank you so much for taking the time as well today to come and have a chat. I hope a lot of our coaches, parents, athletes can listen to it today, forever. Like I've always said, this isn't necessarily a podcast, it's a resource. It's for our community to be able to listen to and get ideas and hopefully something out of it. Appreciate your time. Ngā mihi nui. Thank you so much. And cheers.
Cheers, bro.